Hello, my name is Dr. Luke Bell. I'm lecturer in molecular horticulture at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. This is a screencast of material originally made available for the module Principles of Horticulture and Crop Production from the years 2020 to 2025. Please note that some of the details may now be outdated.
So learning outcomes are to understand the difference between the order, family and genus classifications of Brassicales crops, describe the common characteristics of those crops and species, give examples of different Brassicales crops and their different uses, and understand and describe the diversity of Brassica oleracea varieties and how those have been produced. So just to start off by explaining a bit about the naming of different brassicas and brassicales. So when I say brassicales, this refers to the entire family of plants to which brassica, the species, and brassica species and the genus belongs to. So many of the different plant families within the order Brassicales are not cultivated for human consumption. However, specific ones such as the Brassicaceae family and specifically the Brassica genus are cultivated by humans for food and also for the oil that their seeds produce. So Brassicales really are very diverse in terms of their shape and structure. They can range from anything from a tiny weed all the way up to a tree. So it's a very large family of plants and order of plants, which at first glance might not bear any real resemblance to one another. But the only real sort of way to determine if a plant or species is a member of the Brassicales order is by looking at the flowers. So Brassicales flowers tend to have this typical cross structure, so 4 petals in the shape of a square cross. There are some exceptions to this, so some species within the Trophaeolum family of plants, they have 5 petals and not 4, but they are a member of the same order of plants. And this one pictured here is of a plant called garlic mustard. So the flowers of Brassicales plants are bisexual and cross-pollinated by bees and other insects. Some species show self-incompatibility, whereas some will readily self-pollinate, and this property can be utilised by plant breeders who are producing food crops, for example, to control the crossing and production of different varieties of brassicas. The seeds of most brassicas and brassicales crops and plants tend to contain quite high oil content, and as I'll go on to explain in a moment, a lot of the world's oil is derived from brassica species. So some species of the Brassicales order are very pungent, and they're used as condiments or added to other foods to add flavour and a bit of spice. So some leafy crops have strong and pungent and peppery flavours as well, and these include things like horseradish, watercress, wasabi and rocket. So they're all part of the same family of plants and order of plants. And that's another kind of characteristic of Brassicales, in that they all contain chemical compounds called glucosinolates. So these are used in plant defense, and they are converted into other chemicals called isothiocyanates by an enzyme which is located in their tissues. So when we bite into the leaves and tissues of these plants, it initiates that reaction and gives rise to these very distinctive tastes and flavours of brassica crops. And some of those isothiocyanate compounds can be very pungent and very powerful, and that's why mustard is well known as a condiment all over the world, and because of its pungency, and that's because of these different compounds which are contained within the seeds of the plant. So there are many different types of Brassica species, but I'm just going to focus here on the ones which are cultivated by humans for food or oil production. So Brassica is the genus of plants, and there are several different species. So Brassica carinata is also known as Abyssinian mustard or Abyssinian cabbage, and this is primarily used as an oilseed crop and nowadays for biodiesel production. Brassica juncea, known as Indian mustard or brown mustard, and that's typically included in different condiment mustards and harvested for its seeds. Then there's Brassica napobrassica, which is known as rutabaga in the United States, and in Europe it tends to be called swede or Swedish turnip, and it's cultivated for its edible roots. Brassica napus is also known as rapeseed or oilseed rape. It can be cultivated for its oil, the oil in its seeds, but it's also possible to eat the leaves of that plant as well. Then we have Brassica nigra, so black mustard, again used for its seeds and incorporation into different condiment sauces. Then we have probably the most economically important horticultural species of Brassica, so that's Brassica oleracea. So this includes kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi. So this is one of the ones, one of the species which I'm going to focus most on in the next few screencasts. And it can be cultivated for many different uses. So you can eat the leaves, the flower heads, the buds, and the stems. So it's been diversified quite broadly for its different edible characteristics. Then finally we have Brassica rapa, and again this is also a species which has been diversified quite a lot, particularly in Asia. It's also known as tatsoi, komatsuna, Chinese cabbage, Chinese turnip, rapini, napa cabbage, pak choi or bok choy. So it has many different names, and again used for many different purposes, and different parts of different types of cultivars can be eaten in different ways. Then there are other species which are of the family Brassicaceae. So I'm just going to go through some that you may have heard of. So as I've already touched upon, Armoraceae rusticana is horseradish. So again, the roots are used as a condiment and spice. Sinapis alba is white mustard, and again that's one of the most economically important sources of condiment mustard. Lepidium sativum, so garden cress, that's also a member of the Brassicaceae family. A lesser well-known one is called Cram maritima, and that's sea kale. Again, you can eat that for its leaves. Nasturtium officinale is watercress, again used for its edible shoots and leaves. Raphanus sativus, radish, is a member of this family, grown for its roots, and which have quite a characteristic taste and flavour, and quite diverse as well. Eutraema japonica is wasabi, again as well as mustard and horseradish. It's known for its real strong pungency, and so it's cultivated only really quite well in Japan, where it's grown as a spice and condiment from its roots. Then we have Aruca sativa and Diplotaxis tenuifolia, which are types of rocket, and again these have a characteristic peppery and hot taste and flavour. So I'm going to start focusing now a bit more on Brassica oleracea. As I said, this is probably the most economically important horticultural species of the Brassicales order. It's thought to have originated and been domesticated in the Mediterranean region, and the different types and varieties of Brassica oleracea have arisen in different places over the course of human history. So how did a single species become so morphologically diverse? So in case you weren't aware already, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, kohlrabi are all members of the same species, Brassica oleracea, but they've been diversified by humans into different varieties that we grow quite routinely and every day and kind of take for granted on the supermarket shelves. But they're very, as you can see from this diagram, they're very different in terms of the way they look. So these have been selectively bred from wild mustard over many hundreds or even thousands of years to create these different properties. They're not distinct species because they can easily cross-pollinate, and indeed new products are often brought out which are a cross between two different types. So for example, a recent one was called Kalettes. So that's a cross between I think a kale plant and a Brussels sprout plant. So it forms these kind of small headed structures which have been marketed and sold as a new and diverse product. And that's all thanks to the fact that each of these different varieties is capable of cross-pollinating and producing fertile offspring, even though they look very different. So the exact origin of when and how Brassica oleracea was developed is unknown, but it's thought to have been originated from wild mustard, and kale has been documented and consumed since ancient times, because kale is essentially the leafy parts of a cabbage plant, of a wild mustard plant. So it started to be consumed in that form, and then it became diversified after that for its different flowering organs and also lateral buds, which I'll come on to. So cabbage consumption was reported as early as about the 12th century. Then we have later on cauliflower becomes mentioned in historical texts, and it's thought to have arisen possibly in Cyprus, though there are conflicting accounts of as where it was first sort of developed. So that was around about the 17th century, and then also broccoli around the 18th century was mentioned quite frequently in culinary texts, but it's likely that they were consumed in one form or another for possibly hundreds of years prior to these first mentions in historical books and documents. Brussels sprouts, we know, are a more common, a more recent development in terms of the physiology of Brassica oleracea, and so those didn't come along until around about the 19th century and were developed in Belgium in Europe. So just in summary, Brassicales crops are economically important as both horticultural and agricultural crops. Brassicales are extremely diverse, which share common features in their flowers from which they can be identified. Crops have a variety of uses, from food to oil and biodiesel production. All Brassicales contain chemical compounds called glucosinolates, which give rise to their distinct tastes and flavours. And Brassica oleracea cultivated varieties are diverse and have been bred for specific traits used through and uses through artificial selection and breeding by humans.